First contact, first blood. The holograms flickered ominously in the war chamber of the UEF Vengeance, Earth's foremost battle cruiser. Commander Elara Frost stood with her hands clasped behind her back, her steel-gray eyes fixed on the alien vessel displayed before her. 6 months ago, humanity had no idea they weren't alone in the universe. Now, they were facing an ultimatum from a species that had conquered 17 star systems. "Play it again," Frost ordered, her voice steady despite the knot forming in her stomach. The alien materialized once more, a towering figure with iridescent scales that shimmered under the lights of what appeared to be their command bridge. 4 arms crossed over an armored chest as 8 vertical pupils narrowed in what Frost had come to recognize as contempt. "People of Earth," the translation software rendered in a synthetic voice, "I am Supreme Overlord Draskvon of the Viridian Empire. Your primitive species has been observed for 2 standard cycles. Your planet's resources are now required for the glory of our expansion. Surrender immediately and submit to integration, or face complete extermination. You have 1 planetary rotation to comply." Tactical Officer Hiro Tanaka shook his head. "They've positioned battle groups at every strategic point in our solar system. 17 dreadnoughts, over 200 support vessels. Our entire fleet is outnumbered 5 to 1. And outgunned 20 to 1 if their energy readings are accurate," added Dr. Omar Nazari, the ship's science officer. His fingers danced across the holographic interface, bringing up detailed scans of the alien armada. "Their technology is centuries beyond our conventional weapons." Frost's second-in-command, Lieutenant Commander Jackson Hayes, stepped forward. His weathered face betrayed no emotion, but his voice carried the weight of 30 years in Earth's defense forces. "Ma'am, perhaps we should consider their terms. By time for evacuation protocols." "No," Frost cut him off. 17 systems, Hayes. 17 civilizations that likely had this same conversation before they were conquered or wiped out. She turned to face her bridge crew. These were the best Earth had to offer, men and women who had never imagined they would be making first contact under the shadow of annihilation. Yet there wasn't panic in their eyes. There was resolve. "Communications, open a channel to the Viridian flagship," Frost ordered. Lieutenant Ryakor nodded, her fingers moving deftly across her console. "Channel open, Commander." Frost straightened her uniform and stepped into the transmission area. "Supreme Overlord Draskvon, this is Commander Elara Frost of the United Earth Federation. We've received your demands." The alien's massive form appeared again, those unnerving eyes focusing on her with predatory intensity. "Then you understand your situation is hopeless. Your surrender is." "We will not be surrendering," Frost interrupted, allowing a small smile to form on her lips. "But there is something you should understand about humans. Throughout our history, we've faced extinction-level threats, some from nature, others of our own making. Each time, we've adapted. Survived. Evolved." Draskvon's upper set of arms gestured dismissively. "Brave words from a species that has barely left its own solar system. Our warships will reach your orbital defenses in 6 hours. Your extinction is." "You misunderstand me, Overlord," Frost said, her smile widening fractionally. "I'm not negotiating. I'm warning you about something you should have researched before threatening us." The alien commander's head tilted in what might have been curiosity or irritation. "And what might that be, human? We don't wait for threats to materialize. When facing annihilation, humans strike first." Frost nodded to Core. End transmission. The image of the alien vanished, replaced by the tactical display showing the approaching Viridian armada. The bridge fell silent. "Dr. Nazari," Frost said quietly. "Is Project Cassandra ready?" The science officer's dark eyes met hers. "Yes, Commander. The infiltration nanites have been dormant in their fleet for the past 3 months, ever since we detected their observation probes. They've replicated throughout their systems, awaiting activation. Frost turned to Hayes. And the quantum disruptors? Armed and primed within all identified Viridian vessels, the older officer confirmed. One command sequence and their entire fleet experiences catastrophic drive failures simultaneously. Communications, inform all Earth Defense Forces, Frost ordered. We're implementing the Lazarus Protocol. Authorization code, Frost Alpha 70 Epsilon. Lieutenant Kor's fingers flew across her console. Lazarus Protocol authorized and transmitted, Commander. Frost turned back to the main display, where tiny dots representing Viridian vessels continued their inexorable approach toward Earth. They think we're primitive because our ships are few and our weapons conventional. They have no idea what we're capable of when our survival is at stake. Aboard the Viridian flagship Eternal Dominion, Supreme Overlord Draskvon paced the command deck, his clawed feet clicking against the polished obsidian floor. The human commander's defiance perplexed him. In 3 centuries of conquest, no species had responded to the Viridian ultimatum with anything but terror or desperate negotiation. War Master Krav Thul, he called to his chief strategist. Your assessment of the human response? The elder Viridian scales had dulled with age, but his tactical mind remained the Empire's finest. Psychological warfare, Overlord. They attempt to create uncertainty where none should exist. Our intelligence is thorough, they possess no weapons capable of matching our fleet. And yet they smile in the face of extinction, Draskvon mused. Scan their system again. I want to be certain we haven't overlooked. A piercing alarm cut through the command deck as emergency lights bathed the room in crimson. Overlord, the sensor officer cried out. Energy fluctuations detected throughout the fleet. All vessels reporting system malfunctions simultaneously. Before Draskvon could respond, his tactical display exploded in a cascade of alerts. Viridian ships across the formation were reporting critical failures, weapon systems offline, shields collapsing, engines shutting down. Impossible. Krav Thul snarled. We are being attacked, but there are no enemy vessels within range. Draskvon gripped the command rail as his own flagship shuddered violently. Where is the attack coming from? The engineering chief staggered onto the bridge, green blood seeping from a wound on his upper arm. The quantum cores, Overlord. They're destabilizing from within. Something has compromised our maintenance systems. Understanding dawned in Draskvon's eyes with horrifying clarity. The humans. They were already inside our ships. Back on the UEF Vengeance, Commander Frost watched as the Viridian fleet dissolved into chaos. Ships drifted powerless in space, others experienced catastrophic reactor failures that tore them apart from within. Project Cassandra performing exactly as designed, Commander, Dr. Nazari reported. The Nanites have successfully reprogrammed their maintenance systems to target critical infrastructure. 87% of their fleet is now non-operational. Hayes stepped to Frost's side, his expression grim yet satisfied. They never considered that we might have detected their observation probes months ago. Or that we'd use their own technology against them. All Earth defense vessels report ready for engagement, Commander, Tanaka announced. The Viridian fleet is crippled and vulnerable. Frost nodded, her expression hardening. Launch all fighters. Target any remaining operational vessels first. No survivors. She opened a channel to the Viridian flagship, which was now drifting helplessly in space. The image of Draskvon appeared, his command deck in ruins around him. Smoke filled the background as emergency systems failed. What have you done? The alien demanded, genuine fear replacing his former arrogance. Exactly what I warned you about, Frost replied calmly. You threatened our extinction. We responded in kind. We underestimated your species, Draskvon admitted, his voice faltering. A common mistake, Frost said. And a fatal one. Let this be a lesson to any other empire that thinks Earth is an easy conquest. Humanity doesn't fight fair. We fight to win. As the transmission ended, Frost turned to her crew. Send this recording to every colony and outpost. All spacefaring civilizations should understand what happens when you declare war on humanity. Lieutenant Kor nodded, but her expression was troubled. Do you think there will be retaliation, Commander? The Viridian Empire spans 17 systems. We've only destroyed one fleet. Oh, there will definitely be retaliation, Frost replied, her gray eyes hardening. Which is why we're not stopping here. Tactical, prepare jump coordinates for the nearest Viridian colony world. Science, upload the Cassandra nanite blueprints to all UEF vessels. Hayes raised an eyebrow. We're taking the fight to them? Frost nodded grimly. They came to exterminate us, Hayes. Now they've awakened something they can't control. The age of humanity hiding in one solar system is over. By threatening our extinction, the Viridians have ensured their own. As the UEF Vengeance prepared to jump to faster-than-light speed, Commander Elara Frost gazed at the debris field that had once been the mightiest Viridian battle group. The first interstellar war involving humanity had begun with a decisive victory, but she knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy was about to learn exactly what humans were capable of when pushed to the edge of extinction. And the lesson would be written in the stars themselves. The Silent Knife. Captain Marcus Wade crouched in the shadows of Maintenance Corridor C-7, deep within the heart of the Viridian military installation on Nexus Prime. His matte black tactical suit absorbed light rather than reflected it, rendering him nearly invisible to both organic eyes and standard security sensors. The only betrayal of his presence was the occasional soft blue glow from the neural interface embedded at his temple, a necessary risk for the mission at hand. Status, he sub-vocalized, the words transmitted directly to his 3-person infiltration team scattered throughout the massive complex. Eastern Quadrant secure, came the immediate response from Lieutenant Diana Rodriguez. Security grid compromised. You've got 60 seconds before the next patrol. Central Data Hub accessed, reported Specialist Theo Wallace, the team's cybernetics expert. Firewall penetration at 70%. These aliens build impressive security systems. Good thing we're more impressive, replied the third voice, that of Dr. Ethan Novak, the civilian scientist who had designed the nanite weapon they were about to deploy. I'm in position at the Atmospheric Regulation Center. Ready when you are, Captain. Wei nodded to himself, mentally reviewing their mission parameters. While Commander Frost and the UEF fleet engaged the remnants of the Viridian Armada in the outer systems, drawing attention and resources, his team had a far more insidious objective, to transform Operation Dead Switch from tactical victory to strategic dominance. The High Command doesn't believe the Viridians will surrender after one defeat, Wei had been told during his briefing with Admiral Devon Blackwood 3 days earlier. They've conquered 17 systems through brute force and technological superiority. Their entire cultural identity is built on the myth of their invincibility. So we shatter that myth completely, Wei had responded, understanding immediately. The Admiral's weathered face had hardened. Exactly. We hit them everywhere simultaneously, not just their military installations, but their civilian infrastructure, their government, their very confidence. This ends quickly, or it doesn't end at all. Now, deep in enemy territory, Wei prepared to fulfill that brutal mandate. Remember, he sub-vocalized to his team, standard nanite deployment protocols. We need full saturation before activation to ensure maximum effectiveness. He moved silently down the corridor, his enhanced muscles allowing him to move with preternatural smoothness. The Viridians had never encountered human infiltration specialists before, soldiers genetically and cybernetically optimized for stealth operations. Their security systems were designed to detect their own kind, not the predators humanity had engineered specifically for this war. Wei reached the primary ventilation hub, a massive chamber of twisting conduits and humming machinery that processed air for the entire military complex. Here, at the heart of the Viridian command structure on Nexus Prime, he would deliver Earth's most devastating weapon. "I'm in position," he reported, removing a small metallic sphere from his tactical harness. The device pulsed with faint blue light, the only visible sign of the billions of microscopic machines contained within. "Preparing for release. Atmospheric conditions optimal," Novak confirmed. "Wind patterns mapped and control systems compromised. We'll achieve 97% coverage within 8 minutes of release." Wei placed the sphere against the main intake valve and activated the deployment sequence. The device hummed briefly before dissolving into a fine metallic mist that was immediately pulled into the ventilation system. "Package delivered," he confirmed. Beginning exfiltration. Across the Viridian installation, life continued uninterrupted. In the central command chamber, War Master Krovthul received reports of another defeat, the third Viridian battlegroup destroyed by Earth's mysterious weapon. His scales flushed dark with rage as he addressed the Emergency Council. Supreme Overlord Draskvan's death was merely the beginning, he snarled to the assembled commanders. "The humans possess technology we did not detect during our observation period. Their ability to compromise our quantum cores suggests infiltration tactics we've never encountered. Could they have agents among us?" asked Subcommander Vexloren, her crest flaring with anxiety. "Shapeshifters or mimics?" "Impossible," Krovthul dismissed. "Our bioscanners would detect any." He stopped mid-sentence, a strange sensation overtaking him. Around the room, other Viridians were experiencing the same discomfort, a slight metallic taste in the air, a momentary dizziness. "War Master?" Vexloren inquired, noting his sudden silence. Krovthul shook his massive head, composing himself. "It's nothing. Fatigue, perhaps. We've been fighting without rest since the human counterattack began." Unknown to him, billions of microscopic machines were already streaming through his lungs, entering his bloodstream, and infiltrating his neural pathways. The same process was occurring in every Viridian within the installation, and soon, across their entire empire. Back on the UEF Vengeance, Commander Elara Frost received the encrypted transmission from Captain Wei's team. "Phase 1 of Operation Dead Switch has been completed successfully," reported Lieutenant Rodriguez. "Nanite deployment achieved at all primary targets. Awaiting activation order." Frost exchanged glances with Lieutenant Commander Hayes. "Any casualties?" "None, Commander. The infiltration teams extracted without detection." Frost nodded, satisfied but not relieved. The weight of what they were about to do settled heavily on her shoulders. "Very well. Inform Dr. Nazari that we're proceeding with Phase 2. I want every available sensor focused on the Viridian response." In his laboratory aboard the Vengeance, Dr. Omar Nazari prepared the activation signal that would transform the sleeping nanites from passive infiltrators to active weapons. The science team had debated for hours about the ethical implications, but in the end, survival trumped morality. "The signal is ready, Commander," he reported. "Once transmitted, the nanites will begin systematic sabotage of all Viridian technology, followed by selective neural interference in their military leadership." "Meaning?" Hayes asked, his expression grim. "Meaning their weapons won't work, their ships won't fly, and their commanders won't be able to issue coherent orders," Nazari explained. "We're effectively crippling their entire civilization in one stroke." Frost's gray eyes hardened. "And civilian casualties?" Nazari hesitated. "Minimal direct casualties. The nanites are programmed to prioritize military targets and avoid lethal action against non-combatants. However, when a spacefaring civilization suddenly loses all its technology, people die," Frost finished for him. "I understand." She turned to face the tactical display, where the locations of 17 Viridian-controlled systems glowed ominously. "In less than 24 hours, humanity had gone from facing extinction to becoming the aggressor in an interstellar war. History would judge them for this decision, but first, they had to survive to have a history. Transmit the activation signal, Frost ordered quietly. Across 17 star systems, the silent knife of humanity's vengeance began its work. On Nexus Prime, War Master Krovthul was in the middle of ordering a counteroffensive when his neural pathways began misfiring. Words became jumbled in his mind, memories fragmented and reassembled incorrectly. Around him, chaos erupted as command consoles sparked and died. Defense systems initiated emergency shutdowns. Communication networks dissolved into static. The mighty Viridian war machine, which had conquered world after world with methodical precision, suddenly found itself unable to perform even the most basic functions. In the skies above the Viridian homeworld, Grand Marshal Zexcanner watched in horror as his flagship systems failed one by one. The proud commander who had led the conquest of 3 civilizations now faced an enemy he couldn't see or fight. "What is happening?" he demanded, as technicians scrambled frantically to restore power to critical systems. "Unknown, Grand Marshal," his science officer replied, panic evident in her voice. Similar reports coming in from all colonies and outposts. "It's as if our technology is turning against us." Zexcanner's 8 eyes narrowed in sudden understanding. "The humans, they've done to our entire empire what they did to Draskvan's fleet." Outside the viewport, he watched as defense platforms drifted powerless in orbit. Emergency signals flashed across the planetary surface as infrastructure systems failed. In mere minutes, the Viridian Empire, conquerors of 17 systems, had been reduced to a pre-industrial state. Back on Earth, Admiral Devon Blackwood addressed the United Earth Defense Council, his weathered face solemn as he delivered his report. "Operation Deadswitch has exceeded all expectations," he stated. "Within 24 hours, we've neutralized 95% of the Viridian military capability across all 17 systems. Their communication networks are dark. Their fleet is effectively dead in space. Their ground forces are in disarray." "And civilian casualties?" asked Counselor Juarez, her expression troubled. "Minimal direct casualties," Blackwood replied, echoing Nazari's earlier assessment. "But their civilization is experiencing catastrophic infrastructure collapse. Without our intervention, they face a humanitarian crisis on an unprecedented scale." Council Chair Yamamoto leaned forward. "Are you suggesting we aid the very species that came to exterminate us, Admiral?" "I'm suggesting we remember what makes us human, even in victory," Blackwood responded firmly. "We've demonstrated our power. Now we must demonstrate our wisdom." As the Council debated humanity's next move, Captain Marcus Way and his team observed the chaos on Nexus Prime from their cloaked extraction vessel in high orbit. The once gleaming metropolis below was now largely dark, with only emergency systems powered by isolated generators still functioning. "Hard to believe we did all this with microscopic machines," Lieutenant Rodriguez remarked, her voice subdued. "They were ready to wipe out our entire species, and we brought their empire to its knees without firing a shot." Way nodded grimly. "That's the thing about humanity that the Viridians never understood. We've spent our entire history finding better ways to kill each other. When we finally united and turned that ingenuity outward." He gestured toward the darkened planet below. "So what happens now?" asked Dr. Novak. "Do we just leave them like this?" "That's not our decision to make," Way replied. "Our mission was to ensure humanity's survival by any means necessary. We've done that. What comes next will determine what kind of interstellar species we choose to become." As their vessel prepared to jump back to human-controlled space, Way couldn't help but wonder if they had merely won the battle or fundamentally changed the rules of engagement for all future conflicts in the galaxy. Either way, the message was clear: humanity would not go quietly into extinction. The silent knife had done its work. Now would come the reckoning. When Titans Fall. Grand Marshal Zex Canner stood motionless before the shattered viewport of what had once been the Viridian High Command Center. 3 days had passed since the human's invisible weapon had brought his empire to its knees. Outside, the once gleaming capital city of Viridia Prime lay in partial darkness, illuminated only by emergency lighting and the occasional fires that emergency response teams struggled to contain. The casualty reports, Grand Marshal, his aide said quietly, offering a primitive paper document, the only reliable method of communication since their data networks had failed. Zex Canner took the report with trembling claws. His proud crest, once a vibrant display of his authority and lineage, now hung limp and dull against his scaled neck. The numbers before him told a story not of a military defeat, but of a civilization in collapse. 23 million without power, he read aloud. 36 million facing critical food shortages. Medical systems failing across all major population centers. He lowered the paper, his 8 eyes blinking in sequence, a sign of extreme distress in his species. And our military capabilities? Virtually non-existent, Grand Marshal, the aide replied. 97% of our fleet remains disabled. Ground defenses are operating at minimal capacity using isolated power systems. Communications between systems are limited to light-speed transmissions from the few remaining functional relays. Zex Canner moved to the tactical table, where a physical map now replaced the sophisticated holographic displays they had relied upon for centuries. Wooden markers represented their forces, pathetically few compared to the markers representing advancing human vessels. They're coming, he said simply. Not just to defeat us, but to ensure we can never threaten them again. The High Council is requesting your presence, Grand Marshal, the aide added hesitantly. They're considering unconditional surrender. Zex Canner's head snapped up, his crest momentarily flaring with the last vestige of Viridian pride. Surrender? In 3,000 years of expansion, no Viridian leader has ever surrendered. In 3,000 years, no enemy has ever brought us to this state, the aide countered, daring to meet his superior's gaze directly. The humans didn't just defeat our military, they undermined the very foundation of our civilization. Our technology, our communication, our infrastructure, all compromised by an enemy we drastically underestimated. Across 17 star systems, a similar reckoning was taking place as the once mighty Viridian Empire faced an unprecedented truth: they were no longer the predators, but the prey. Admiral Devon Blackwood paced the bridge of the UEF Indomitable, the newly commissioned flagship of humanity's expanding fleet. At 62, he was the oldest active-duty commander in Earth's defense forces. Silver hair cropped close to his skull, deep lines etching a face that had seen humanity's near extinction and now its ascendance. Status of the Arcturus battle group, he inquired, his voice carrying the distinctive South African accent that had become familiar to billions of humans following the war's first broadcasts. Battle Group has secured the Viridian colony on Arcturus 4, Admiral, reported Captain Valentina Sorokina, his tactical officer. Minimal resistance. Their defensive systems failed exactly as predicted when our ships entered orbit. Blackwood nodded, studying the strategic display where human forces, represented by blue markers, advanced methodically through what had been Viridian space. In the 7 days since Operation Dead Switch had been activated, humanity had reclaimed 3 systems and was advancing on 7 more simultaneously. And the civilian population? He asked, his weathered features revealing nothing of his thoughts. Humanitarian teams deployed as ordered, Sir, Sorokina confirmed. Medical aid, emergency power systems, and food distribution networks are being established. Initial reports indicate the Viridian civilians are confused by our actions. They expected extermination, Blackwood stated matter-of-factly. Just as they planned for us. Instead, we're providing aid. Commander Elara Frost, recently promoted and reassigned as Blackwood's executive officer, approached the tactical display. Some might question why we're expending resources to help an enemy that would have shown us no such mercy. Blackwood's pale blue eyes fixed on hers. Because we're not fighting to become them, Commander. We're fighting to remain ourselves. The bridge fell silent, the weight of his words settling over the assembled officers. Every one of them had participated in the planning and execution of humanity's most devastating weapon, the nanite swarms that had brought an interstellar empire to its knees. Victory had been swift and nearly bloodless by historical standards, yet the moral implications hung over them like a shadow. Admiral, the communications officer interrupted. We're receiving a transmission from Viridian High Command. It appears to be, request for terms of surrender. Blackwood straightened, exchanging a meaningful glance with Frost. Put it through. The main view screen flickered to life, displaying the image of Grand Marshal Zexcanner. The once proud Viridian commander appeared diminished, his scales dulled and his posture lacking the arrogant confidence they had seen in previous encounters. Admiral Blackwood, Zexcanner began, his translator rendering his words in flat, emotionless English. The Viridian High Council has authorized me to discuss terms for the cessation of hostilities. You mean surrender, Blackwood corrected calmly. The Viridian's crest flattened completely, a sign of submission that needed no translation. Yes. Surrender. The first in our 3,000-year history. Your history of conquest ends today, Blackwood stated. As does your threat to humanity and any other species in this sector of the galaxy. Our terms are non-negotiable but perhaps more merciful than you deserve. He outlined the conditions: complete demilitarization of all Viridian worlds, dismantling of their war machine, human oversight of their recovery, and reparations to be determined. Most significantly, the release of any subjugated species within their empire. You would allow our civilization to continue? Zexcanner asked, genuine surprise evident in his voice. We're not conquerors, Grand Marshal, Blackwood replied. We're survivors who will ensure you never threaten us again. But extinction was your plan, not ours. After the transmission ended, Frost approached her superior. Do you think they'll honor these terms, Admiral? 3,000 years of imperial expansion doesn't disappear overnight. Blackwood's expression hardened. They don't have a choice. And to ensure compliance, I want Science Team Alpha to begin the next phase immediately. In Laboratory 7 aboard the UEF Indomitable, Science Director Naomi Okafor supervised the final adjustments to what humanity had designated the failsafe protocol. A brilliant neuroscientist of Nigerian descent, Okafor had spent the past decade developing theoretical countermeasures against alien biology, work that had seemed academic until first contact had come in the form of an extinction threat. The modified nanites are ready for deployment, Director, reported her assistant, Dr. Vikram Kapoor. Neural pathway mapping is complete for all 7 major Viridian subspecies. Okafor nodded, studying the microscopic machines displayed on her monitor. Unlike the first generation that had disabled Viridian technology, these were designed to remain dormant within their bodies, a permanent insurance policy against future aggression. Neural inhibitors functioning within parameters, she asked, her fingers moving deftly across the interface. Yes, Director. Upon activation, the nanites will suppress aggressive impulses directed toward humans or our allies. Not mind control, just a biological failsafe against organized violence. Okafor sighed heavily, the ethical implications weighing on her. Let's hope we never need to activate them. The Council's authorization was specific: this is a last resort, not a first option. As she finalized the deployment protocols, an alert flashed on her secondary monitor. The computer had completed its analysis of Viridian biological samples collected during the first phase of the war. This can't be right, she murmured, examining the results with growing concern. Run the genomic comparison again, full spectrum analysis. The computer complied, and the results remained unchanged. Okafor's dark eyes widened as implications cascaded through her scientific mind. Dr. Kapoor, suspend the failsafe deployment, she ordered abruptly. And get me a direct line to Admiral Blackwood. Immediately. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Blackwood received Okafor's transmission with growing disbelief. "You're certain of this?" he demanded, his normally composed demeanor slipping. "The genetic evidence is conclusive, Admiral," Okafor's voice replied over the secure channel. "The Viridians aren't the original architects of their empire. They're a client species, genetically modified and elevated to serve as the military arm of something much older and potentially more dangerous." "Then who?" Blackwood began. "We don't know yet," Okafor interrupted. "But the Viridian genome shows evidence of extensive artificial manipulation approximately 3,000 years ago, coinciding exactly with the beginning of their imperial expansion. Someone else is pulling the strings, Admiral. Or was, until we unwittingly disrupted their proxy empire." Frost exchanged alarmed glances with Captain Sorokina. "Are you suggesting there's another species behind the Viridian Empire? One that might view our victory as a direct challenge?" "That's exactly what I'm suggesting, Commander," Okafor confirmed. "And if I'm right, we may have just announced humanity's presence to a far more dangerous enemy than we realized." Blackwood's expression darkened as he addressed the bridge crew. "Adjust our strategic priorities. I want deep space sensors at maximum range. Deploy reconnaissance drones beyond the former Viridian frontier. And most importantly, I want every piece of information the Viridians have about their origins and who might have engineered them." He turned to Frost. "Commander, prepare a diplomatic team. If the Viridians are puppets, we need to find out who's been pulling their strings, and whether they're already mobilizing against us." In the ruins of the Viridian archives on Nexus Prime, Captain Marcus Way and his infiltration team made a discovery that would change the course of the war. Beneath the primary data repositories, secured behind barriers designed to prevent even the Viridians themselves from accessing it, they found evidence of the Empire's true origins. These structures predate Viridian architecture by millennia, Dr. Novak observed, examining the ancient chamber they had uncovered. "And look at these symbols, they don't correspond to any known Viridian script." Lieutenant Rodriguez approached a central pedestal where a crystalline device pulsed with faint energy, somehow untouched by the nanite attack that had disabled all other Viridian technology. "Whatever this is," Way stated grimly, "it wasn't built by the Viridians. And I'd bet my life it's still transmitting." Across the gulf of space, beyond the frontier of known star systems, something ancient stirred in response to a signal it had been awaiting for 3,000 years. The Viridian experiment had failed, but the data collected would prove invaluable. The human species had revealed itself to be far more dangerous than anticipated, adaptive, resourceful, and utterly ruthless when threatened. Such potential could not be left unchecked. Such a species could not be allowed to expand further into the galaxy. The architects had created the Viridians as a test, sending them forth to probe the developmental status of emerging intelligent species. Those who submitted became resources. Those who resisted but failed became cautionary examples. But the humans, they had not merely resisted. They had systematically dismantled a proxy empire 3,000 years in the making, using methods the architects themselves had not anticipated. For the first time in millennia, the ancient species faced a genuine challenge to their dominion. The response would need to be proportional. Deep within the void between stars, massive structures began to awaken, sentinels of a civilization that had watched countless species rise and fall. The humans had proven themselves worthy adversaries. Now they would face the architects of 100 fallen empires. The true war was about to begin. On Earth, Admiral Blackwood addressed an emergency session of the Defense Council, his weathered face grave as he presented Science Director Okafor's findings. "The victory we've been celebrating may be premature," he concluded after explaining the evidence of Viridian genetic engineering. "We've defeated the pawns, but the players remain hidden, and there's every reason to believe they're now aware of us." Council Chair Yamamoto frowned deeply. "Are you suggesting we face an even greater threat than the Viridian Empire?" "I'm suggesting," Blackwood replied carefully, that we prepare for the possibility that our first interstellar war may not be our last, and that our next enemy may have been manipulating galactic affairs for thousands of years. As the Council digested this sobering assessment, a priority alert sounded throughout the chamber. The Deep Space Monitoring Network had detected massive energy signatures on the edge of charted space, signatures unlike anything produced by Viridian technology. Something was coming. And this time, humanity would not have the advantage of surprise. The Titans had fallen, but in their wake, greater shadows loomed. The reckoning had only just begun.